the flagship of Codage Paris in the heart of the Marais. So it's kind of beautiful to be here and to be live in this wonderful place.
I know, I miss it. I have to come there soon. I mean, we're lucky here in Madrid. I have to be really honest. I've put all my blinds down because it's incredibly sunny and we can definitely see spring. Spring is definitely here. Spring's definitely here. So I love this part of the year. And now that the days are longer with the time change, that makes huge difference.
Yes, it is. And we are happy to be live for this session. Just waiting a little bit for everyone to join. Thank you all for being here. We're so happy. I can't wait to begin.
I know our most favorite subject, the 10 essential KPIs your spa must follow. The best subject out there.
Well, actually, the first that we had to do to give the base to everyone.
Absolutely. I can't wait to share the other ones every month. Should we reveal the date for next month?
We can.
Or we'll keep that as a subject. I'll reveal the topic. Hello from Akhtar. Hello from Julian.
Hello.
We're having all our fan club join in.
Yes.
Hello, Alexandra. Where are we all calling in from? If you could just drop a little note in the chat button. Oh, someone's also speaking. Okay, let's see if we can get this person to speak. Anna. Hi, Anna.
London. Oh, that's beautiful. Canada.
Paris.
All around the world. That's amazing.
Excellent.
Hello, Davina from London.
Hello, Ariella. Malta. Nice. So we have Spain, we have France, we have Canada. What time is it for you guys? Gosh, it must be early.
I don't have
getting started in the morning. Okay. Amazing. Fantastic. I think we'll give... Hello, Laura.
Is everyone here?
Okay, should we get started?
Yes, I
9:30, Alexander. Oh, so it's not that early. Not that early. 3:30 here. So we're glad to be the first people you are talking to, or seeing at least.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm happy to participate to this first session. I'm Charlotte, Training and Spa Operation Coordinator at Codage. And for those of you who might don't know Codage, this is a French cosmetic brand created more than 10 years ago now by Julien and Amandine Azencott, a brother and sister. And the wonderful concept behind this brand is that we always provide for each of our clients a personalized skincare routine and treatments. We are working with partners all around the world, and actually some of them are live with us. So thank you for joining. And we do have our own spa where our expertise comes from. We are thrilled to welcome you to our first session of Wellness Decoded by Codage. We have been designing this session to help our partners to manage and optimize their spa. Our partners have been asking us for a long time now for secrets, and Sonal, we're going to finally share them with you all in this series. And now, actually, let me introduce you to our amazing host, the global wellness expert and author of the best-selling The Wellness Assets, Sonal Uberoi.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It is such a pleasure to be hosting the first ever Wellness Decoded by Codage series. As Charlotte mentioned earlier on, we wanted to take out a series dedicated to business insights for our spa managers, not only our spa managers, but also for the industry. We have found that many of our partners are asking for that assistance on, okay, how can we just measure our profitability? How can we boost performance? So we thought, you know what? every month we're going to actually launch and put together a presentation to actually teach you the best practices that we are doing in our spas, telling you what is working and also what isn't working. And today we're kicking off with my most favorite subject, and I know that's Charlotte's and the whole team's favorite subject here at Codage, the 10 essential KPIs your spa must follow. As Charlotte mentioned, this is an interactive session, so please do drop your notes in the chat section. There tends to be sometimes a delay, so do bear with us. And if for any reason you can't hear me well, just raise your hand or let Charlotte know. We want this to be an interactive session. And also at the end of the session, I will be taking more questions in case we have them. What I do recommend before we dive in is to make sure you get yourselves your calculator, a pen, and a piece of paper, because we will be doing calculations live over here. So there will be some very interesting calculations that you probably had a different way of doing, and we're going to share the way we do. I do see a hand popped up. I'm going to find Anna. I'm going to try to get you on, but it says no request pending. So Anna, if you did have a question or anything, just let us know in the chat section, or if you wanted to speak, I can try to get you onto the presentation. So without further ado, we're going to dive in to my favorite subject, the 10 essential KPIs. Now, I've been in this industry for a very, very, very long time. Though I'm only 30 years old, I have actually been in this industry now for 20 years. And I remember when I started off in this industry, we were just barely measuring spa occupancy, therapist occupancy, average treatment rate, and then we found that the revenue per available treatment hour was the new hot thing. And what I've seen in these last 20 years is that there are so many KPIs out there to measure. When I say KPIs, key performance indicators, for those of you who don't know what KPIs are, those metrics we use to measure certain areas of the performance of our spas. And what I have found out over these years, there's so much information out there, drop-through rates, flow-through rates, retention rates. The question is, what KPIs should we measure? How should we measure them? So there's a lot of confusion out there. And what I found out now in these 20 years in this industry, keeping things simple. The key first is consistency. I remember when I became the regional director of spa of a very big hotel chain, and I found when I was looking at everyone's KPIs, key performance indicators that they were handing in, nothing made sense. It was practically impossible, if not senseless, to actually benchmark. For example, in spa occupancy, some people were measuring the occupancies of their spas, including treatment turnaround time, that is the time needed to prepare the treatment rooms, whereas other places weren't. So it makes no sense to benchmark if you're not being consistent. It doesn't matter how you measure your KPIs as long as you're measuring apples with apples. So you measure it the same way every month. And even if the next spa manager comes and has a different way of calculating it, it's important to stick to one way. There is no right or wrong when it comes per se to KPIs, is what I have seen. And second, relevance. As I mentioned earlier on, you can really chase squirrels or go down rabbit holes if you're not measuring the right KPIs for your spa. You sometimes don't even need to measure more than 3 or 4. They just have to be relevant to your business. And not all KPIs are relevant to all businesses. Each business has their own complexity, their own size. And sometimes we only have so many hours in the day that we cannot sit there calculating several KPIs a month. Then the last and incredibly important key is insight. We don't measure KPIs for the sake of measuring KPIs. KPIs need to be telling us something. And when we're evaluating our KPIs, they must tell us something. Saying having an average treatment rate of 120 means not much if we don't know what it's telling us. So when we're talking about insight, it's incredibly important when you're actually working on the budget of your spas. We don't only look at the profit and loss, but we deep dive into the KPIs. So the top line of 500,000 or the bottom line of 100,000, what do they translate into in terms of our KPIs? So each month when we get a list of our KPIs, the actual figures, we are comparing it to our business objectives. If we're not doing that, again, it makes measuring KPIs a bit pointless if we're not going to actually look at them. So now what we're going to do is dive in to the 10 KPIs that we measure at our Maison Codage and our by Spa Codage. I'll be talking about a summary. So I'll be summarizing quickly what each key performance indicator means. I will be also showing you how we calculate it. So I'll be sharing the formula with you. And this is what I was saying earlier on. You definitely need a pen, a piece of paper, and your calculators, because I will be showing you how to calculate them live. Okay, so just to see, is everyone okay? Can you hear me fine? Just a thumbs up or yes in capital letters will be good enough. There is a lag, so I will be continuing, and I do expect to see the yeses in the chat box. Okay, so we're going to be using Spa A as our example. Make sure that you're writing notes down. Number of treatment rooms, 6. The opening hours, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., 11 hours a day. In this given day, this Spa A sold 5 60-minute treatments, 3 80-minute massages, 1 90-minute facial, and 1 15-minute add-on treatment for the eyes. That day also, 4 therapists worked, 2 worked their full 8-hour shift, 1 only worked a 6-hour shift, and 1 left early and only worked 4 hours out of his 8-hour shift. The total revenue of that day was $920. The total number of guests in the hotel that day, so Spa A is a spa inside a hotel, was 225 guests in-house, and that is adults. Then the total number of hotel guests that came to the spa were 5. The total number of guests of those 5 repeating were 2. The total number of external guests, 3. So the total number of guests in the spa that day was 8. 5 plus 3, 8. And then the gross operating profit that month was $20,000, and the total number of treatments performed in the month, 300. Don't worry, if you didn't write that down, I will be going back to this slide. I was just testing whether you actually were doing it. Okay, so the first one, spa productivity. Spa productivity, obviously known as your spa occupancy or your treatment occupancy. This KPI tells you how productive your treatment rooms have been in a given period. Now, I would also like to specify, many times people use the terminology spa occupancy versus spa productivity, treatment room occupancy versus treatment room productivity. Now, it is mistakenly used interchangeably. So I will explain myself. Spa and treatment room can be used interchangeably. I strongly recommend in our spas, we make a huge differentiation between productivity, the term productivity, and the term occupancy. When we are talking about productivity figures, we do not add the treatment turnaround time. Now, let me say that again. We do use interchangeably spa and treatment room. Those can be used interchangeably. What cannot be used interchangeably is productivity and occupancy. And the reason we don't use them interchangeably is because productivity for us means we want to look at the raw data figures when it comes to the actual treatment hands-on body time. So that is the productivity. We do not include treatment turnaround time. We also do measure treatment room or spa occupancy, and that includes treatment room treatment turnaround time. And the reason we do two separate ways is firstly to see, okay, how occupied are our treatment rooms? How long is the treatment turnaround time? And that also gives us a good indicator into how our therapists are actually selling. For example, we could have very, very low treatment turnaround times, which probably means we get a lot of revenue from our treatments, but that might translate into low retail sales. So it's incredibly important. And in our spas, because we have up to 50% retail sales, we always make sure we are measuring productivity and occupancy. And if there's a huge difference and we're seeing that that has not translated into retail sales, we sit down and see how we can actually optimize efficiency. I will be going into that later on in more detail, but for this sake, spa productivity means only the treatment room time and not the turnaround time. So the formula is total number of treatment hours sold divided by the total number of available treatment hours in that specific period. So when we came to our spa A's details, the total number of treatment hours sold was 10.75. How did I get to the 10.75? I added all the 5 60-minute massages, the 3 80-minute massages, the facial, and the eye mask, which came to 10.7 hours. And the total number of available treatment hours that day was 66. Remember, our spa was open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., so it is open for 11 hours. That gives us as a spa productivity of 16.3%. Is everyone okay? We're all with us? Yes, no? Thumbs up? Okay, now going to the next one. Average treatment rate. So the average treatment rate or the average treatment price of all the treatments sold in a given period. So your ATR always should be measured closely with spa occupancy and also spa productivity. So how do we calculate our average treatment rate? It is the total treatment revenue in a given period divided by the total number of treatments performed in that period. And in our example A, the total treatment revenue generated in a given period in that day, remember, was $920. And the total number of treatments that were performed were 10 treatments. $920 divided by 10 treatments gives us our ATR of $92. Now, it is incredibly important to know that when we are measuring our average treatment rate, they are exclusive of VAT or any form of taxes. It is the net amount we always measure. Okay, the next one is your revenue per available treatment. I did talk earlier on in the webinar when we were starting about RevPAR, revenue per available treatment hour. But I decided to actually adapt this to what hoteliers use. Now, due to USALI, the Uniform Standard Accounting of the lodging industry, the system for the lodging industry, they talk about treatments, they don't talk about time. So I have adapted revenue per available treatment. So RevPAT measures the revenue production performance of your spa. So it tells you how effectively you are using your spa's productive capacity. Now, in your spa, you have two productive capacities. You have two perishable inventories, so to speak. Your treatment rooms and your therapists. Without a treatment room, there is no treatment, and without a therapist, there's no treatment. So you need both of them. So they are your spa's productive capacity. So how do you measure revenue per available treatment, spa productivity times average treatment rate? In our case, it was 16.3% times $92, which gets us to a $14.98. A good question, Jerome. What would be a good productivity rate? I think now, that's not going to be an incredibly useful answer. It totally depends on your budget. It totally depends on your room inventory, so how many number of treatment rooms you have. And it also depends on the age or the stage of your business. In your business, you can normally, let's say, be in your first year of operation, where clearly you're building your business. And when you're building your business, that means that you're not operating at full capacity just yet. I have also been in circumstances where traditionally, or let's say 10, 15 years ago, when spas were built, you would have 20 treatment room spas. Again, this is an example and a bit of an exaggerated example, or maybe 14 treatment rooms with a hotel that's only 100 rooms. So clearly the ratio of treatment rooms to the actual hotel number of rooms, and let's assume it's an airport hotel, that spa will always be producing at a severe undercapacity because it's not really set up to win. So it's important to know where your high end is, depending your spa, what you've inherited, what is the new inheritance. It really, really depends. I'll give you an example. I used to always think that spa productivity was only around 30-40% max until I was overlooking a spa, fantastic spa director in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. And I saw her figures one day and it said spa occupancy 119%, spa productivity 119%. I was like, 119%? That's really not possible. And when I actually deep dived, she had 14 treatment rooms, catering to 800 hotel rooms. That spa was always near full capacity. She used to also manage to get people to speak to one another, and she used to do couple treatments. Two strangers who don't even know one another, they were there receiving a treatment together just so that they wouldn't miss their treatment. So to answer that question in a very long-winded way, it really does depend on your spa. That's why I talked about the second point, relevance.
And we also had an interesting question from Jasmine. Can you take into account spa entries for RevPAT?
I don't, because I purely use that in terms of treatment revenue. You can create a separate occupancy. I have seen that, and we have also used that in terms of capacity for hydrothermal areas. That area you can use as kind of a measure if also the hotel is actually going to give a charge back per entrance for each hotel guest used. But for RevPAT, I would not add that because it's per treatment and not per entry or per service per se. Okay.
Thank you for your more questions, everyone, and don't hesitate to ask more.
Okay, I saw there was one. Okay, I'm very good. Excellent. So going to go off to the next one, therapist productivity. This KPI tells you how productive your therapists are in terms of revenue generation. Now, I would like to highlight, this does not mean that when our therapists aren't conducting treatments, they're not doing anything. So I would just really want to highlight, we have to be very, very careful with therapist productivity. I remember not too long ago going in to visit a hotel manager, and she insisted that our spa productivity had to be nearly in the late 90s. And I sat there staring at her thinking, really, the therapists don't only perform treatments. There are many, many things we do. Treatment turnaround time is one of them, but also stock take training. So it's very important that when we're reading our therapist productivity, we do not use it as a tool to actually come down on our therapists and work them to the ground. Okay, so how do we measure therapist productivity? Like spa or treatment room productivity, we do not count the treatment turnaround time in terms of productivity. In our spas, when we use therapist occupancy, that is when we do include the turnaround time. But when it comes to productivity figures, that's revenue generation productivity. And that's me not spelling productivity well, it's one Y. It does not include treatment turnaround time. The formula, total number of treatment hours sold divided by the total number of hours your therapists are on duty. So for our spa A, remember, the sum of all the treatment hours done was 10.75 hours. And the number of hours our therapists were actually on duty was 26 hours. I do not want to make anyone car sick, but I'm going to go back to this slide. We will see 4 therapists worked on the day, 2 8-hour shifts, 1 6-hour, and 1 4-hour. We will not count the 8-hour shift for the therapist who left early. Very, very, very important. Now, I'm fast forwarding. Hopefully no one's getting seasick. So that's 10.75 hours divided by 26. The percentage is 41.3%. Now, your average treatment time. Remember, we were talking about average treatment rate and revenue per available treatment. Now, clearly, the average treatment rate of a hotel spa or any spa whose average treatment time, they tend to sell shorter treatments. It doesn't mean if you sell shorter treatments, you are worse or better. That's just the reality of your audience. Now, if it's 30 minutes, clearly the ATR of that treatment will be lower than, let's say, someone whose average treatment time is actually 66 minutes. So it's important when we're talking about ATR and RevPAT that we always take into account our average treatment time. So though we sell treatments, I like to specify, especially when we're talking about yield management, we do sell time in our spas, and any drastic changes in average treatment time could negatively impact RevPAT and our occupancy and productivity rates. So if we have a high number of, let's say, 30-minute treatments, and we see that our treatment turnaround time tends to be 30 minutes between each 30 treatment, then it clearly does not make business sense depending on our retail sales, whether we should be selling 30-minute treatments or we should be increasing them. So how do we measure average treatment time? Total number of treatment hours sold divided by total number of treatments sold. In our case, it was 10.75 hours, and the total number of treatments we sold was 10, which gives us an average of 64.5 minutes. Okay, just to see how everyone is. Jerome, let me see do you take into account time in between treatments for productivity rates? No. In our spas, there is no right or wrong there, Jerome, but we do not, for productivity, take into account treatment turnaround time. But when it comes to occupancy figures, we do take into account treatment turnaround time. So it's that differentiation I mentioned earlier on between productivity and occupancy. Productivity means how productive they are in terms of revenue generation, and occupancy means how long they're occupied for. That's why we use that differentiation. Occupied includes treatment turnaround time, because obviously your therapist is occupied and also your treatment room is occupied when someone is cleaning a treatment room and preparing it. And productivity is more based on productivity. Okay. All right. So the repeat guest ratio, another incredibly important KPI. So tracking the number of guests that return to your spa gives you very valuable information on how engaged your guests are with your brand. Now, I know for some hotel spas, it is quite challenging depending if you're in a resort location where there's not much external client or you have a high transient guest. How do we measure the repeat guest ratio? It's the total number of repeat guests divided by the total number of guests that visited your spa. In our case, there were 2 guests that repeated. They happened to be hotel guests, and the total number of guests that visited our spa that day was 8 guests. Our repeat guest ratio was 25%. Now, external guest ratio, those of you calling in who are managing hotel spas, this is incredibly important, particularly if you're urban hotel spas. So the split of external versus internal clients is particularly important, as I mentioned, for hotel spas that rely on local clients to sustain their business. So how do we calculate the external guest ratio? So total number of external. So when I say external, non-hotel guests, those that are not sleeping in the hotel, divided by total number of guests that visited your spa. In our case, the total number of external guests was 3, and the total number of guests that visited the spa that day was 8, which means that our external internal guest ratio is 37.5%. Now, we move on to the hotel guest capture rate. For hotel spas, this is an extremely important KPI because it tells you how many hotel guests are visiting your spa. How do we calculate this KPI? We get the total number of hotel guests visiting the spa divided by the total number of guests staying in the hotel in that given day. Now, if we go back, I don't know, I'm taking you on no one getting seasick, I hope. If we see what happened to our spa A figures, we will see that the total number of hotel guests in the spa that day was 5. The hotel that day had 225 adults sleeping, which means that our hotel guest capture rate for this hotel spa was 2.2%. Now, there are questions as to what is a good percent, what isn't a good percent. It all depends on the target audience. It all depends where your spa is, what kind of hotel it is. Now, if you have a very high external guest ratio, when I say external guest ratio, in some of our spas, we have 80% of our guests are external. They love the Codage brand, they love it, and they come to it. So the majority are actually external guests, and only 20% in some cases tend to be the actual hotel guest. Now we have huge volumes of guests, which means that obviously with that we have 20%, and we still do enjoy high hotel guest capture rates. But the hotel guest capture rate always should be seen hand in hand with your external guest ratio. Do they make sense? If your external guest ratio is incredibly low and your hotel guest capture rate is incredibly low, that means you're very, very likely to have very low spa productivity and very low therapist productivity rates, and you need to take more actions in order to drive business. Now, the last one, it's one I do love measuring, and it is one that has evolved as I have evolved in the industry. It's called the GOP PAT. So the GOP, gross operating profit per available treatment. We looked at the revenue per available treatment. Now we look at the GOP per available treatment. Okay. So all the previous 8 KPIs we were talking about focus on top line, which is great. And that's where most of our budget is. However, it is equally important to keep track of your bottom line so you know how much profit each treatment has generated. Now, it's incredibly important to separate what you've got in terms of treatment revenue and all the costs related to generating that treatment revenue. So you do your gross operating profit divided by the total number of treatments sold. And in our case, Spa A's case was that the gross operating profit was $20,000 divided by the total number of treatments sold, $300, which means that the profitability was $66.66 per treatment. Any questions? So far.
No.
Excellent. Hi, Patricia. Yes. Oh, yeah. You responded, Charlotte, to Isel. Yes. Excellent.
Thank you all for your interest. We will send it to you.
And then the last one, last but not least, incredibly important, guest satisfaction. So this KPI gives you valuable information on how you can improve service standards, treatment quality, maintenance of facilities you're offering, and any other factors. Now, how you measure guest satisfaction, there's so many online tools available. Some people use TripAdvisor, some people use Google reviews. It doesn't matter what you're using to measure, but you must measure guest satisfaction in order to know, are your guests really happy? You have to keep your pulse in the business, know what your consumers want. We have seen a huge change, a shift in paradigm when it comes to the needs, the wellness needs of consumers in general. So, and it's only going to get even, things are going to involve only more. So it's very, very important that we are keeping very close track of the guest satisfaction. Are they happy? What do they want? What do they want more of? And if we're going to change anything, also get them involved in any of the changes we want to be doing. So that is me. I've been going on and speaking away. That takes us to the end of the KPIs. One thing that's incredibly important, if I can summarize, when I talked about consistency, relevance, and insights, it's so incredibly important to know that you're measuring your KPIs consistently, that you're explaining how you have calculated your KPI. It doesn't matter how you choose to calculate your KPI, but you do have to give an explanation as to why you have chosen it. For example, we have explained why we differentiate productivity versus occupancy, because for us, retail sales are incredibly important. And if we are not carving out enough treatment turnaround time, we know that will negatively impact retail sales. So it doesn't matter how you measure your KPIs, but it's important to know how you're doing it and explain why you're doing it that way. Then from there, once you actually understand your key performance indicators, you'll be able to accurately evaluate your spa's performance. What are these KPIs telling you according to your budget? Do they make sense? What kind of corrective strategies do you need to be putting each month in order to actually get your operation back on track? Those are incredibly important. And remember, less is more. Fewer KPIs to measure actually makes your life a lot easier. And then when you have accurately evaluated your spa's performance, then you actually know what to change, and you can change it with confidence instead of, I'm going to add this offer, which is only 30 minutes when my average treatment time is 90 minutes. It's senseless. So it's important to know what to change. And then when you get all these 3 steps right, you're understanding your KPIs, you're accurately actually evaluating your spa's performance, you know with confidence what you need to change, what is working, you will inevitably boost revenue. So now, that is me. Any questions?
Not for now in the chat, but we did had some question asked privately. Should I start with them, Sonal?
Yes, please, fire away.
So, can we measure spa and therapist occupancy with and without treatment turnaround time? I guess we already answered that.
Yes. As I said, if you're going to do it, as I said, there is no right or wrong. If you're going to do it, it's incredibly important to understand which one, just make it clear that you're doing it. For us, occupancy, be it spa, treatment room, and therapist, occupancy means we include our treatment turnaround time. Now, in some of our spas, because of just pure design way, they're in 2 floors or they're very far. So we can't have 15 minutes. We need to have 30 minutes between treatments. And in other spas, we can actually only have 10 minutes. And we've had that because it's so near to the reception area. So with occupancy, we recommend distinguish. Occupancy includes treatment turnaround time. Productivity does not. And you should be measuring both of them.
Okay, thank you. In the hotel guest capture ratio, do we count children as a part of the total number of guests in-house?
Oh, that's a question I get asked so often. It's always a challenge. Now, the answer to that question is, if your spa has a no child policy, so if children aren't allowed to use your spa in terms of treatments for whatever reason your child policy is, then in that calculation, when you're measuring total number of hotel guests, that should be without children. However, there are some spas that do offer treatments to children, even if they have the parents in the treatment rooms with them. In that case, it should include them.
Great. Are extra therapists or freelancer part of the calculation for therapist occupancy?
Yes, so incredibly important. Many times we do not measure the extras. They are so incredibly important. They're generating revenue for us.
Of course.
They actually do count in our productivity and occupancy figures. Incredibly important. Very good question. Very good question.
And from what therapist productivity level do we recommend to add new staff? That's an important one.
That's $1 million question. I'd hate to say it depends on your spa, but I've generally found the sweet spot to be around 50-55%. Now, allow me to explain myself over there. There's some, if we're talking now, we're talking about standalone spas and then hotel spas. If it's a standalone spa that is open Monday to Friday or closed on Sundays or public holidays, then you obviously have different constraints and you can manage your time better. And they're local clients. Hence, you can probably get your productivity levels higher up to, let's say, 60-70% productivity, again, depending on the size of the facility. But if we're talking about hotel spas, we will find that many times spas tend to be this amenity department, this extra service that sometimes a guest would want a treatment at 9 a.m. in the morning or at 8 p.m. And we are open. We tend to be open to spas in hotels 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that means that therapists who are shifted on certain hours of the day, they'll obviously have very low productivity levels. Let's say Monday at 9 o'clock, someone might not even want to have a treatment, but our therapist is actually on shift. Whereas Saturday evening, a therapist is up at 90% occupancy or, let's say 70% productivity. So again, it depends what kind of spa you have. But normally the sweet spot is around 50% to add another therapist, or you start exploring extras or freelance therapists.
Good. We also have some more wonderful questions in the chat. First from Isel, do you have any KPIs for therapy specifically and not for the spa overall? And she's suggesting that we do a session on that.
I will think about that. That's a good question. That's a good question, Isel. Our therapists actually are they make things happen. So we can definitely come up with 5 KPIs that we do in our spas, best practices and best practices that are tangible, that we can measure. That could be another topic we could do. Apart from just revenue generation and cost generation, we could probably also add in terms of their health and how they're performing. Thanks for that, Isel.
And we have Jasmine. What will be a good one? I think she's talking about revenue, but I'm not sure.
No, Yasmin, I may miss this, but you do measure retail rate. Yes, definitely incredibly important. That actually 11 essential KPIs. That's the one that I spilled. I missed in our presentation. Yes, very, very important when we are measuring retail percentage rate, which means the total sales in retail divided by the total sales generated by treatments. You will find many times that spas that have a hydrotherapy facility or that have other facilities tend to add that revenue. You can measure it however you want to, but I normally like measuring it specifically with retail compared to treatment revenue and also compared to total revenue on the spa just to see the variance. But very, very good point. Incredibly important KPI to measure retail.
And for now, I don't think we have any more questions.
Oh, before I go, I did mention earlier on, and I know Charlotte, I shouldn't be revealing it just yet, but I will. I am too tempted to reveal it. So our next session, we started off with the 11 essential KPIs. The 11th one is retail rate. Your spa must follow. Now, next month, keep your eyes peeled on the date. Charlotte will be revealing that soon. We'll be talking about yield management strategies in your spa, how to use dynamic pricing policy and how to use dynamic availability in order to optimize yield. I will be talking more about this complex stuff next month, and I can't wait to be sharing that with you all.
Yes, such an important subject also.
Excellent. Any more questions? Excellent. So as we did mention, you will be getting a copy of the KPI presentation, because I know I took get the speed of flight through all of them. But we, Charlotte, will be sending that over to you if you
Yes.
drop your emails in the chat.
And if you have any question or if you want to become a spa by Codage and really optimize your profitability, send me an email to charlotte.rabi@mycodage.com. I just send it into the chat. I will be happy to jump on a call and explore the best solution for your spa. Thank you all so much for joining us for this first session. We were so happy.
Thank you so, so much. Wishing you all a fantastic afternoon. Alexander in Canada, fantastic day ahead. And keep your eyes peeled for the new yield management strategies in your spas. Wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.